Does your distribution box for your septic system have the right kind of access? Do you even know that your septic system has a distribution box? When's the last time you looked to see if it's actually doing what it's supposed to do? These are all great questions, and I think that are very, very important questions to ask. Let's get into why. Okay, so you have a septic system. We're going to kind of cover a little bit about the basics, and sorry for the cicadas, they're super loud today. We have ourselves a septic system. We all know that you have a tank, and you have to have an absorption system to get rid of the water. The tank captures the solids, the absorption system deals with the liquids. They work together in order to adequately get rid of your wastewater. When you have your tank, you're going to obviously have a cleanout or a riser on it. Hopefully you have a riser on it. We did an episode yesterday talking about risers. Make sure you get one on if you haven't already, and make sure you watch that video so that way you can talk about what is a riser. When you have your absorption system, most commonly you're going to see 1 to 3 drain fields. Now, if you have one trench, you're not going to have a riser. Generally, if you have a singular piece of an absorption system, they'll just do a straight pipe from the tank to whatever that is. If you have multiple absorption systems, like 2 trenches, 3 trenches, or even 6, if you have a massive house, you're going to see what's called a distribution box. A distribution box is literally just a little tiny concrete box, usually about the size of a shoebox. Sometimes they're a little bit bigger if you have larger systems, like 2 to 3 drain fields. But most commonly, you will see a little tiny 12-inch by 16-inch box. It'll have between 4 and 6 holes in it. There will be some systems that do have larger boxes, like we have some 3x3s from time to time, but you really don't want the big ones. The whole purpose of a distribution box is to take the water from the tank and then evenly disperse it into your drain fields. So if you put 100 gallons in, if you have 3 trenches, it should evenly disperse all of that 100 gallons into those trenches without having more going to one or the other. Commonly, you would start seeing distribution boxes roughly in the 70s to 80s. Before that, usually most places would only have 1 trench, 1 pit, or just 1 component to the absorption system. There were some counties in the 70s and 80s that would do serial distribution, which is basically where if you had 2 trenches, it would be 1 straight pipe to trench, it would kick left or right depending, solid pipe again, and then it would double back on itself for the remainder of the drain field line. The problem with serial distribution is that if you have a defect in one or the beginning portion, it's not going to be able to allow stuff to get into the second portion. So let's just say that you're putting in a fence and you hit the solid portion of pipe and you don't realize that you did it. Well, once the first trench fails, the water won't get to the second trench, meaning now you got to replace the whole system. You can't just fix that one part. A distribution box is much more user-friendly, so that way if you do have a problem with more water getting to one trench versus the other, you can manually stop up that one trench to force all the water to go to the other. Commonly, distribution boxes were not accessible until about the 2014 time period, at least in our state. I don't know about your state, but in Maryland, you never really saw anybody put a lid to the surface on a distribution box until about 2014. All distribution boxes will have a lid of some variety because you do have to get into it at some point. The downside is that the older style, you had to excavate the entire box in order to open the lid, which, if you, depending on the depth, could be hard. Sometimes they would be 1 foot, sometimes they would be 4 foot. I've even had some distribution boxes at 7 foot. Now, at that depth, obviously you're going to have an excavator in order to get down to it. You might be wondering, why do I even need to get to it in the first place? Good question. The problem is, every now and again, something's going to go wrong in the distribution box. Could be that maybe there's dirt. Could be maybe there's a root. Could be as simple as now we have ourselves a partial collapse in the box and you don't see it. What happens when a distribution box starts to age is that things will start to force water into one of the trenches over another. The problem with this is that it causes oversaturation to the whole system. Oversaturation in a drain field can and sometimes does lead to surfacing sewage. It can also cause sewage to back up towards the home. Nobody wants that. So whenever you have a distribution box, it's important to make sure that you can see what's going on. And that brings us to why in 2014 they started forcing system installers and homeowners to have an access point on the distribution box. If you have an old system, let's just say it was installed in the 90s, you don't have access on your distribution box at the surface. And if you don't, that's okay. Nobody's going to force you to do it. But the moment you go to replace that box for whatever reason or do any kind of repair on that box, guess what you're doing? You're putting in the manhole riser or the 4-inch cleanout on it. The only requirement right now is for a 4-inch cleanout. There are some issues with the state health department versus the county health departments, where they're trying to push to put manholes on the distribution boxes. Places like Baltimore County are making it to where if you do any replacement to your distribution box, you have to have a manhole riser on it. Other counties, like Carroll County, for example, you're only required to have a 4-inch cleanout on it. You might be wondering, what is the purpose of these access points? That's a good question. When you have the 4-inch cleanout, think about it more like an observation port. It's there so that way if you have a problem, you're able to investigate what might be potentially going on. Is it because maybe there's roots? Maybe it's a collapse. Maybe it's a partial collapse. Could also be in any even distribution to the drain fields from the box. Having that port, it makes it to where it's a lot easier to diagnose what's going on and for the homeowner to see what's happening in their system. If you pop that lid open and there's water all up into it, like coming up out of it, that means something's not draining correctly. If you take a mirror and flashlight and you look down inside and you see that there's a whole bunch of roots, yes, that's a problem. The Cleanout is really there just as an information tool. It's not really there to help you maintenance anything or to adjust anything. That's where the manhole riser comes into play. The manhole riser is going to be put over top the entire box so that way the entire thing is open. Because remember, they're not that terribly large. So if you put a 24-inch manhole riser over your distribution box, that makes it to where you're able to actively add in speed levelers. There are these little tiny hockey pucks with a hole that you stick into the pipe and you adjust so that way you can force the water to flow into one or the other or to even things out. Speed levelers are very important, especially if you have a box that's maybe settled or maybe you just want to have a more adequate control over how much water is going into the system. Let's just say you install it and you didn't quite get it level like you needed to. Okay. Don't worry, you don't have to tear the whole thing apart, you don't have to redo everything. You put the speed levelers in and then you can level everything out to get even distribution. Remember, the name of the game when it comes to the distribution box is to evenly disperse the water into the drain fields. By having these speed levelers, it makes it to where you can get the system to function properly. If one drain field is receiving too much effluent, if it's getting too much all at once, what's going to happen is that system's going to fail, and in a perfect world, it fails and goes back to the other ones. But sometimes you get it to where it surfaces, and that's kind of gross and is a health hazard. By having a properly functioning distribution box, you help to maintain everything. It also makes it to where if one drain field is receiving too much liquid, you can easily rectify that situation on a normal pumping schedule. If you have a manhole riser, it gives the maintenance provider a better chance to actually get in there and do what he's got to do to keep your system functioning properly. I recommend to everybody to consider going ahead and getting a manhole riser on their distribution box, or if you're going to replace the box, you should just go ahead and preemptively install one. Currently, as far as I'm aware, the only county in Maryland that's forcing people to put a riser on the distribution box is Baltimore County. Every other county, you're still with the 4-inch PVC cleanouts. If your state doesn't do that, it would be worth at least considering putting one of those in on your system, as well as the riser on the septic tank, so that we can maintain everything and keep everything doing what it's supposed to do. The expense is not all that bad. Usually, you get 25 to 30 years on a distribution box before you have to really start thinking about replacement. And at current time, generally a distribution box replacement will put you somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000, depending on how big it is, depending on how deep it is, and all of the extra stuff that goes into it. Like, how many pipes do you need to bring? How many drain fields am I connecting to? Is it really annoying to get to? Maybe it's in the woods. Maybe the excavator has a really steep hill that it has to go on. There's a lot of different factors that can increase or decrease the cost, but if you budget $1,500, $2,000, that'll usually kind of put you in the right ballpark for where we are currently in today's climate. Now, that might change because everything's been all over the place, but that's where we're at right now. The manhole riser is not really going to increase the cost all that much. They do sell plastic distribution boxes that are designed to interlock with the plastic risers, but you could also get a concrete one, and you could build it up with a concrete riser. Usually when I see the risers being installed, though, on a distribution box, almost everybody uses the plastic because it's a lot easier to get the riser to actually connect to the distribution box all in one spot versus having to sit there and fight with getting all of the rocks around the box, getting everything built up around the box. It's a lot more of a pain in the butt. So everybody chooses plastic. Let me know below, do you have a riser on your distribution box? Do you have any kind of access to the distribution box? When's the last time you looked at it? I'm really curious to see how many people in my audience are actively using them or have access to the distribution box. So leave a comment below, share your story. Let me know, do you like having it? Have you had to use it? Maybe your story can help somebody else make a better decision for themselves. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, so what I like might be different from what you want. Let's have that conversation. I have videos posted every day on the world of wells, septic systems, home improvement, You name it, I've got it. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'll see you guys next time.